I'm 76 years old now, and there are mornings when I wake up already tired, not in my body so much as in my remembering. Some things don't loosen with age. They just sit there, waiting for you to slow down enough to hear them again. This is one of those things. I used to think the biggest moments in life arrived loudly. Arguments, firings, doors slammed. But the truth is, most of it happens quietly, with a handshake that lasts a second too long, a smile that doesn't reach the eyes, a sentence that sounds ordinary but isn't. The day he took my bonus and fired me felt ordinary on the surface. That's what makes it stay with me. I was 58 then, not young, not old enough to be done, just old enough to be expensive. I'd given that company 21 years, built systems nobody else understood, held relationships that didn't show up on balance sheets. I was the one clients asked for by name, even if they didn't know why. I wasn't flashy. I wasn't charming. I was dependable. I thought that meant something. The bonus was $88,000. I remember the number because it followed me around for years afterward, like an unpaid debt life kept reminding me of. It wasn't a gift. It was written into my contract. Performance-based, signed, reviewed, approved. We had a record year, best we'd ever had. The morning I went in to collect it, I was already planning how to use it. Not big things, just practical ones. Pay down the mortgage, help my daughter with her first place, replace a car that stalled more than it ran. I wore the same Navy suit I'd worn to every major meeting for a decade. I thought I was walking into a formality. He didn't offer me a seat. He told me the company was going in a new direction. He said my role was being restructured out. He slid a thin envelope across the desk. Inside was a severance check that didn't include the bonus. When I pointed that out calmly, he leaned back and folded his hands like a man explaining something to a child. He said the bonus had been reallocated. He said the board agreed. He said I should be grateful for the years I'd had. I remember looking at his watch while he talked. It was expensive. Knew I'd helped negotiate the deal that made that watch possible. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't threaten. I didn't beg. I asked one question. Is this final? He nodded. I shook his hand. It lasted half a second. That was it. I drove home in the middle of the day, which felt wrong. The roads were full of people going somewhere, and I wasn't. I sat in the driveway for a long time before going inside. My wife asked how it went. I told her I'd been let go. She waited for more. I didn't have it. That night, I didn't sleep. Not from anger, not really. From a kind of hollow disbelief, I kept replaying the last few years, trying to spot the moment where I should have known. I'd missed dinners, missed weekends, missed my son's last high school baseball season. I'd told myself it was temporary, that once things stabilized, I'd ease up. There was always another quarter, another goal, another promise of later. Later never came. The anger arrived days later, quietly, like a leak you don't notice until the floor starts to warp. I pulled out my old notebooks. I've always been a note-taker, not out of paranoia, out of habit. Dates, names, decisions, exceptions, things that mattered at the time. As I flipped through them, something shifted, not rage, clarity. I realized how much of that company's stability lived in my head. Vendor agreements that weren't written down, client assurances made on handshakes, regulatory shortcuts that only worked because I knew where the edges were. None of it was illegal, but none of it would survive someone like me walking away and letting the truth sit where it belonged. I didn't plan revenge the way movies show it. There was no speech, no deadline. I simply stopped protecting them. Over the next 3 days, I returned calls I'd been putting off for years. I answered questions honestly. When a client asked if the restructuring would affect their account, I said yes. When a regulator asked who oversaw a certain process, I gave them the current name, not the unofficial one. I forwarded documentation I'd been asked to keep internal now that I wasn't internal anymore. all within the bounds of my contract. I checked twice. On the second day, 2 major clients froze activity. On the third, their line of credit was pulled pending review. By the end of 72 hours, the company couldn't make payroll. I didn't celebrate. I didn't feel victorious. I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee and watched the sun move across the floor. My phone rang once. I didn't answer. Weeks later, I heard he'd resigned. Months later, the company filed for bankruptcy. People assumed that was the moment I felt whole again. It wasn't. I got a settlement eventually, not the full bonus, not close. Enough to close a chapter, not enough to rewrite it. What I lost that day wasn't just money. It was the last illusion I had about loyalty. I stayed longer than I should have because I thought endurance would be rewarded. I thought being needed meant being valued. I was wrong. The strange thing is, that wasn't even my biggest regret. Not really. The bigger one came later, when the house got quiet. My daughter thanked me for the help with her place, but she didn't need me the way I'd imagined. My son had his own life, his own rhythms. My wife and I sat across from each other some evenings, both of us aware of the space between us, neither quite sure how it got there. I had won something, I suppose, but I had also arrived very late to everything else. Now, in my 70s, time feels different. It doesn't rush anymore. It waits. I think about that younger man sitting in his office, wearing a watch bought with other people's patience. I don't hate him. I think about myself, shaking his hand and walking out without saying what I felt. I don't admire that version of me either. What stays with me is how easily I believed there would always be more time to fix things, more time to speak up, more time to rest, more time to be there. There wasn't. If you're listening to this and expecting a lesson, I don't have one packaged neatly. I only know that success can hollow you out if you let it stand in for meaning. And revenge, even when it works, doesn't give back what you traded away to earn it. I live quietly now. I water the plants. I take slow walks. I remember more than I plan. Some nights, that's enough. Some nights, it isn't. This is one of those stories that doesn't end with a punchline. Just a man, older now, finally still enough to see the full shape of his life. If this meant something to you, sit with it a while. That's all I ever do now.